All right. So we are going to talk about slope and let's see. Okay, so this is all going to lead up to graphing. So if we talk about the slope of a line, first thing I want to do is talk about the classification of a slope. Okay, classification of slopes. All right, and we read graphs just as we read sentences from left to right. Okay, so if you are asked to read any graph, no matter whether it's a linear graph, um, quadratic graph, or stock graph, any kind of graph you want to read that from left to right. So in this case, we want to talk about straight lines or linear equations. So if you read this graph from left to right, notice that this graph goes up. This graph would have a positive slope. All right, so if you read it from left to right and it goes up, it has a positive slope. If you read a graph again from left to right, and if that graph descends or goes down, you have a negative slope. If you read a graph from left to right and the slope is horizontal, you have a zero slope. Right? And if you look at a graph and the line is vertical, right? I mean, if you read this from left to right, it's just going straight up and down. This has a undefined slope. All right. So those are the four classifications of slope. Okay. The first thing I want to talk about are these two special forms of slope. So we're gonna look at this first. This zero slope. All right. So let's say find the equation. Okay, so I'm gonna just be drawing some really rough sketches. So this is an x and a y axis. So this is 1, 2, 3. I'm gonna go down 3, 1, 2, 3, and I'm gonna go 3 places to the left and 3 places to the right. All right. So we kind of talked about the axis system in the last class, and I'm going to draw a horizontal line here. How would you find the equation for this line? Right. So the next thing I'm going to do is, first off, it's a horizontal line. So horizontal lines they're in the form y is equal to some constant. Okay. So we're going to talk about slope intercept form, which you kind of should be familiar with, is y is equal to mx plus b. Whenever you deal with horizontal lines, there is no x variable, right? And the slope is 0, right? So m is the mathematical notation for slope. If we deal with vertical lines, right, such as this graph here with the undefined slope, vertical lines are in the form x equal to c, and their slope is undefined, right? So now if we were asked to find the equation for this particular graph, since it's a horizontal line, it should be in the form of y is equal to some number. All right, so guess what is that magic number? So I'm just going to take this line and I'm going to write out the ordered pair of points. All right, so I'm going to just take this first point. Like, so for this first point, if I'm at the origin and if I wanted to pull out the ordered pair for this first point, I'm at the origin. I'm not going to move to the left. I'm not going to move to the right. So my x coordinate is 0. I'm going to go down -2. So that y value is -2. All right, so that would be the coordinate for that first point. I'm going to take the coordinate for this second point. So again, I'm at the origin. I'm going to move one place to the right. So my x coordinate is +1. I'm going to go down 2. So my y coordinate is -2. Right. The y coordinate for every point on this line is -2. So I'll just take this point, the point that's to the left. Okay, and again, I'll do the same thing. So I'm at the origin. I want to move one place to the left, so my x coordinate is -1. I'm going to go down 2. My y coordinate is -2. So the equation for this graph should be y is equal to -2. All right. Okay, so now we're going to find the equation for this graph. Okay, again, I'm just going to go out to 3 places in all direction. And I'm going to draw it here. So let's say you were asked to find the equation for this graph. Okay, now in the homework, you're going to be asked to graph equations such as these, and you're also going to be asked to find the equation if you're given a graph. So the horizontal and vertical lines are probably the easiest ones to find. All right, so since this is a vertical line, I know it should be in the form x equal to c, right? So I'm going to do the same thing for this graph. All right, I'm going to just look at the points. And just pull out some ordered pairs. So I'm going to take this point first. Right, so I'm at the origin. I'm going to move 2 places to the left. So my x value is -2. I'm not going up. I'm not going down. I'm remaining on the x-axis. So my y coordinate is 0. I'm going to look at the next point up. All right, so same thing. I'm at the origin. I'm moving 2 places to the left. So my x coordinate is -2. I'm going up 1, +1. So that ordered pair point is -2, -1. If I take a look at this point, this point, Right, I'm at the origin. I'm going 2 places to the left, so my x coordinate is -2. I'm going to go up +2. So if you take a look at these ordered pair points, it doesn't matter what x is equal, excuse me, it doesn't matter what y is equal to, but x is always going to equal to what? -2. So my equation is x equal to -2. Right. So basically, if it's a horizontal line, you want to look for the y coordinate that line passes through. If it is a vertical line, you want to look for the x coordinate that your graph passes through. I mean, I just wrote out all these points just so you could see that. So here are some for you to try. 1, 2, 3. I'll just go out to 3. And we will that graph and this graph. Okay. So I'm going to give you a minute. I want you to find the equation for these, and it worth some points if you do that. Just like we did the last time. Because I don't want to sit up here and take all the fun and graph all these equations for 2 hours. So just scratch this down on a sheet of paper. What would be the equation for this line? And just kind of scratch this down on a sheet of paper, write out the equation from that line based on what we just talked about. And just write your name on it. It doesn't have to be nice and neat or any of that. Okay, so while you're doing that, just write your last name. That's right. That's right. That's right. Yeah. All right. So while you're doing this, just keep these in mind. Right. If it's a horizontal line that goes from east to west, it's going to be in this form. Y is equal to some number. And if it's a vertical line, right, it's going to be a straight up and down line. It should be x is equal to some number. Okay, that is good. Yeah, that's fine. That's right. What's your last name? I'll just jot it down. Let's do this. Did you? Are you trying? That's good. So now is since this is a horizontal line, it should be in the form of y is equal to something. So now this is the reason why I kind of label these. So like if it's a horizontal line, you really want to find the number that on the y-axis that line passes through. So like this line here, it passes, since it's horizontal, it should be y is equal to some number. So the number that it passes through would be 3. So like this equation, like if I were to write out some ordered pairs. So I really wouldn't want you to write out all of these ordered pairs. Just identify that it's a horizontal line and it should be in the form y is equal to some number. And that number that it equals to is going to be the number where it passes through that y-axis. And then like for this one, since it's horizontal, it should be in the form x is equal to some number. So the x value on this one should be 2. Your last name is Lewis? Good. What's your last name? All right, so that was just the horizontal and the vertical lines. So next we're going to talk about the slope. Well, we're going to talk more about slope. The slope is the rise over the run. All right. So that's if you're looking at a slope, you can physically count the slope, which is what we're going to do. And then there's like a mathematical formula. So the slope is also y sub 2 minus y sub 1 divided by x sub 2 minus x sub 1. All right. So first we're going to take a look at this rise over run, and then we're going to take a look at the formula part of things. Okay. So I'm going to draw another hand graph. 1, 2, 3, 4 in all directions. And I'm going to space this out some. All right, so anything to the right is positive. So this is the x-axis. Anything to the left is negative. And for the y-axis, anything up is positive, and anything down is negative. Okay. So I am going to put a point here at -2, -2. And I'm going to put a point here. And that's at 3, 1. And I am going to draw a line through the 2. All right. Okay. So hopefully you can reconstruct this on your paper. All right. And we're going to physically calculate the slope. And I want to just draw on the board so bad, almost everywhere. So to physically count the slope, I'm going to draw an imaginary right triangle, right? Which means that I'm going to draw a triangle. And it doesn't really matter how you draw it. So I can draw the imaginary right triangle. This would be my one leg. And then I would go up, right? I can have a triangle that way. Or I could have a triangle this way. I can go up and to the right. But I'm going to just draw that imaginary triangle here. All right, so that is my imaginary right triangle. Can everybody see that? So I'm just choosing it to draw it this way, but you may choose it to draw it that way. So now we're going to talk about the slope, which is the rise over the run. Right, so the rise is the up and down movement. So whatever this distance is, that's going to be my rise, right? A rise can be positive or a rise can be negative. And my run goes from left to right, so this distance is my run. So I'm going to calculate this distance, right? From this point to this point on my vertex, that's going to be my rise. And then I'm going to calculate the distance from this point to this point, which is the run. All right. So now, well, what is this distance? Well, I'm just going to count from here to here so that we don't actually start counting with this point. So that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, right? So my run is 5. So now I'm here. Can everybody see that? Yeah. So I'm going to count the distance from here to here. So that distance is 1, 2, 3. So what is the slope? Well, I'm going to put my rise, which is 3, over my run, which is 5. So this slope